But first, Australia is defending what appears to be the toughest asylum seeker regime in the world after announcing that no asylum seeker arriving by boat will now be able to settle in Australia. According to the deal with Papua New Guinea Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, asylum seekers will henceforth be processed in PNG. Those found eligible to be refugees could then settle in Papua New Guinea. It's estimated that more than 1,000 asylum seekers have died in or near Australian waters in recent years, and the Rudd government's arguing its initiative is designed to put an end to deaths at sea. Political editor Catherine McGrath is at Parliament House in Canberra. Catherine, what was Kevin Rudd's goal? Anything more than simply getting a headache off the agenda with an election rushing towards him?
Jim, there's no doubt that this issue has led to a bleeding of Labor votes for many years, and particularly over the last 5 years that this government has been in power. Now, during this year, around 13,000 asylum seekers have arrived by boat in Australia. That's a great increase in the numbers. But also over the last few years, about 1,100 lives are estimated to have been lost. So it is a very big issue. It is a safety issue, but you're right, it's also an electoral issue.
It has nevertheless created something of a problem for the opposition, which, as you say, had the government on the back foot, or has had the government on the back foot over this issue for so long.
Jim, that's right. The opposition's policy is quite different. It says it would turn around the boats when safe to do so, and it's also promising temporary protection visas. Tony Abbott today has confirmed his position. He is against this policy that the government has announced and says that it gives too much power actually to PNG and not enough power to the Australian government to resolve the issue. From the Australian government's perspective, they're very much emphasising the risk to life of the sea journey and making an appeal to asylum seekers. The new plan, presented by Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, aims to provide such a deterrent that asylum seekers stop trying to come. In what's probably a world first, Australia says those who try to reach Australia by boat won't be eligible for resettlement here. Prime Minister Rudd has signed a deal with his counterpart in Papua New Guinea. From now on, asylum seekers bound for Australia by boat will be taken there for processing and won't be eligible ever for a place in Australia.
To people smugglers and their business model around the world, that, frankly, your model is now busted. And you better get used to that fact, because this government is going to take a hard line on this. These folk are merchants in death, and with that, their business model needs to be dismantled. Part of this policy response is to do just that.
We don't know the numbers as yet. I don't think the numbers are going to be as big as what we think it will be. I think you will see a quick decline, and you can see from the reports that the smugglers who are now profiting out of this exercise have already said that they are going to stop the boat people travelling. So you can see the genuine people will travel, but the non-genuine economic migrants will fall off, and I think the numbers will be much, much lower than what we already are thinking.
The processing in Papua New Guinea would take place on Manus Island, where both governments say facilities will be expanded. Other locations in PNG are being explored. The Rudd government is trying to set up a system whereby those who are tempted to try to travel to Australia by boat are effectively put at the back of the queue, and Australian resettlement places are given to those waiting in refugee camps overseas and registered with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It's a hardline policy that has shocked many in Australia and overseas, but the government is making no apology for it. Prime Minister Rudd presented his plan to his Labor Party parliamentary caucus at a meeting in Sydney, and demonstrators were there but kept well back.
What we have done is put forward a clear-cut policy. We've negotiated and agreed it with the government of Papua New Guinea. We have had a Cabinet National Security Committee and its advisors and the full Cabinet working on this for some weeks. We believe we have a thorough approach which is eminently defensible in the international community, and with the prospect of being effective.
The first asylum seekers to arrive in Australian waters by boat since the new rules were announced have been told. This group from Iran were informed by officials from the Department of Immigration that they would be sent to Papua New Guinea. Departmental officials have released this video material and this interview with its representative on Christmas Island.
The message that we did give them was quite clear in terms of where they will be processed, and I think that probably sank in a bit. And in fact, I think over the coming days, because they've only just arrived, they'll start to contemplate very seriously whether, in fact, returning home is a better option.
This is the Australian government's message for anyone associated with people smuggling.
And an international advertising campaign has begun.
Paying a people smuggler is not a ticket to Australia. The rules have now changed.
There are so many issues raised by this plan, it's hard to know where to start. A legal challenge is expected, with human rights and refugee campaigners saying it's inappropriate and unfair. The government defends the plan, saying its aim is to cut down on the number of deaths at sea and to give those languishing in refugee camps a genuine hope of achieving a refugee place. Papua New Guinea is one of the world's poorest countries, with extensive health, education and housing shortfalls. It also suffers from well-publicised law and order problems. PNG is currently meeting none of the UN Millennium Development Goals designed to reduce poverty. It's a country with serious economic problems of its own. Australia currently spends $500 million on aid to Papua New Guinea each year, and aid expert Professor Stephen Howes says the new plan is problematic.
One thing we know from the years of experience we've had with PNG, including through Australia's very large aid program in PNG, is that this is a country with very weak public sector capacity. And so certainly the larger the program in terms of asylum seekers, the greater the expectations, the greater the responsibility given to PNG, the more this policy is going to struggle.
Australian refugee policy has been divisive for years. In this parliament back in 2001, then Prime Minister John Howard launched the Pacific Solution after the Norwegian cargo ship the Tampa rescued a boatload of asylum seekers but was refused entry into Australia. The Pacific Solution involved processing on Manus Island and Nauru, and it was dismantled when then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd won office in 2007. He was replaced by Prime Minister Julia Gillard, whose government later signed a deal with Malaysia for a refugee swap, but that was struck down by the Australian High Court. As the number of boats reaching Australia continued to rise, as did deaths at sea, in 2012 Prime Minister Gillard asked an expert panel to examine the issue. It recommended offshore processing be reopened on Manus Island and Nauru. Now that Kevin Rudd is back as Prime Minister, this has been an issue he wanted to deal with. He hasn't indicated how much the new plan will cost, but said he believes it will work. Conditions in the offshore camps in Papua New Guinea and on the island of Nauru are not easy. In recent days, a riot at the centre on Nauru caused $60 million in damage. Asylum seekers who were involved are being charged, and their refugee claims may be impacted.